We'll get there. Maria and I didn't start out as an interfaith couple. We became one 15 years into our marriage. Until then, my wife was a lapsed Catholic. I was a bad Jew. We shared a New Age spirituality and read mystical books to each other as we carpooled to work. We had children and raised them with a smear of Judaism and a sprinkle of Catholicism. We weren't interfaith, but we were interethnic, Jewish and Cuban, Nitro and Glycerin. So we fell in love the way only opposites fall in love, recklessly, foolishly, and completely. The truth is I fell in love with Cuban girls a long time ago when they infiltrated Shenandoah Junior High School. To me, they all looked like Gina Lollobrigida. Large breasts, pouty lips, big sexy eyes. In spite of our teachers' constant efforts to make them stop, they shook their asses when they walked. The other girls in my class looked like, well, girls. Maria was fascinated by Jewish men. She loved Jewish entertainers like Rodney Dangerfield, Ben Stiller, and Sammy Davis Jr. She believed all Jewish men were intelligent and charming and was surprised to discover I was the exception. What surprised me about Maria was the size and complexity of her Cuban family. I needed an organizational chart to figure out all the cousins and uncles and aunts, throw in the communist relatives still in Cuba, and you have the makings of a Latin soap opera. Betrayal, deceit, adultery, theft, unpaid loans, even murder. I have a difficult time remembering who to hate. And then there are the holidays. Maria gets to experience Passover, otherwise known as Food Factor for Jews. Our first one took place at my Aunt Ronnie and Uncle Leo's home. Aunt Ronnie greeted us at the door, kissed my cheek, then wet her thumb and smeared the red lipstick. Maria whispered, "That's disgusting." As Jews, we had learned to suffer the indignities of slavery, persecution, and overly perfumed mishpocha, smearing their saliva on our cheeks. Like my people, I would endure. Then Aunt Ronnie turned to my wife and said, "Did you know I used to diaper your husband's stinky bottom?" I said, "Well, not after we got married." And Ronnie said, "Oh, I diapered him plenty." "Thanks, Aunt Ronnie. I'll return the favor in a few years." "He had the cutest little schmeckle," she said, making a tiny space with her thumb and forefinger. "A schmeckle is a penis, dear." "It grew," I told Aunt Ronnie. Holidays with her relatives were mucho bueno. I always use a few phrases I learned for the occasion. Feliz Navidad, mucho gusto, pásame la mantequilla, por favor. But the most popular phrase by far is no habla español. This always elicits disappointment and pity. To make her relatives feel better, I say I understand a lot more Spanish than I speak. And so I eat my lechon and yuca con mojo and con gris, delicious in any language, and pretend to follow the conversation, nodding, laughing, shaking my head. I'm never sure what they are talking about, but I think it has to do with my schmeckle. But holidays don't hold a candle to the Jewish or Cuban funerals. On the Jewish side, we have weeping women and sobbing men, joke-telling, laughing, and lots of food. The more Orthodox Jews, a minority in my family, tear their shirts, gnash their teeth, and plead with the non-Jews to fix them plates of food. They insist the traditional meal of condolence must be prepared by friends. My wife and the other non-Jews decline the honor. Eventually, my Orthodox relatives get hungry and make their own heaping plates of condolence and stuff themselves like, well, not pigs. The Cuban funerals are always held at the Caballero Rivera Woodlawn Funeral Home. The family jokes about buying funeral plots in bulk and claim to be in a frequent dyer plan. Jews don't believe in open caskets, so the first time I ever saw a dead body was at my wife's cousin's funeral. The deceased, displayed for our viewing pleasure, looked like he was dressed for an interview. Maybe he was. I took my turn stepping up to the coffin. I wasn't sure what to say. He didn't speak a word of English. I leaned over and whispered, "Feliz Navidad." When Maria took her turn, she walked away sobbing. She explained that her family keeps a permanent record of who cried and who didn't, and who dressed like a whore. But in spite of these quirky differences, Maria and I had a lot in common. She loved the Jewish holidays, the Jewish food, and the Jewish mother-in-law. I got to live out my junior high school fantasies about Cuban girls. We were soulmates. Then about 10 years ago, her soul changed. She became a born-again Christian. We became an interfaith couple. I didn't think we would make it. We argued about religion night and day. She insisted Christianity was the only true religion. I accused her of a spiritual arrogance. She said, "I'll pray for you." I considered having an affair with a beautiful coworker until my wife told me that as a born-again Christian, the only grounds for divorce was infidelity. Just to get back at her, I purposely didn't cheat. My wife and I seemed doomed to suffer in a marriage beset by demographic differences. Perhaps it was payment for some past life transgression, or original sin, depending which of us you ask. According to the Buddhists, every person that comes across our path is a teacher. I began to look at her spirituality as a test. If I could tolerate her spiritual beliefs, but she couldn't tolerate mine, I win. We began holding each other to a higher standard. I would ask Maria, "If you're such a saint, how come you screamed at your mother and slammed the phone?" She would ask me, "If you're so enlightened, how come you didn't tell the cashier she forgot to charge you for the vodka?" The unintended side effect of all this nonsense is that we both became slightly better people. Over time, we talked about religion less and less and started to have more fun. As the children got older, they made up their own minds about religion. I came to the conclusion that when we stripped away the brittle layers of theology, Maria and I were soulmates. I thought maybe we would make it after all. Then Maria became a Republican.